Alright, I guess this is another one of those videos directed at more of the newer players for FGO because they're coming off of the anniversary and summer, which is extremely hype. You know, we got Archetype Earth, we got Ibuki, Lady Avalon coming in from Arcade, Scotty comes back to save quick, and then the next couple of weeks are, well, kind of mid, for lack of a better saying. And I've been seeing comments on not just YouTube, but Discord servers and Twitter being like, oh my goodness, the game is dying, it's already going to go to pod, we just can't do anything. But I'm just here to tell my newer players that are just coming out of the anniversary and somewhere that this is how it kind of always is. As someone that plays multiple gacha games, FGO is just one of those ones that goes through cycles. Sure, it probably could be better and more well balanced, but because they focus more on the story, it just tends to go through cycles of, you know, we gotta get the writers to make a good new story for the event and focus on building new servants, building the lore for those servants, and figuring out what their skills and NP are going to be. It's just something that happens in cycles. You'll literally see this happen at the beginning of next year. I mean, this was something that happened to me when it happened. You know, it was going pretty mid. It was like, okay, so we get Kirei coming out. That's pretty cool. But then Pope Joanna finally releases and everyone's like, okay, she's solid, but not super hyped. Then Takasugi gets released from NPC jail and hey, that's kind of cool, but not super hype. But then around April, they drop Draco and Tiamat as playable servants, and everybody loses their minds. In fact, if you look at the sales for FGO, they went from like bottom of 100 to number 1 when Tiamat released. It's just a thing that happens with the game. We go through hype, low points, hype, low points. It's just something that happens. Because even if you think that Arcade Collab is the most hype thing that can happen, what happened right after that? Kashin Koji released and nobody cared. I mean, sure, it was a lotto event, it was really good for getting resources, but everybody, their interest just immediately dropped after it was like, oh, we finally got Tiamat and Draco, thank you for that. Anyway, tell me when the next hype servant is gonna release. It's just something that happens all the time. And I mean, sure, they dropped a story chapter with Ordeal Call 1 right after that the next month, but even that was mixed with, you know, kind of mixed reviews. You know, it was like some people were kind of excited for it, other people didn't really care as much. I mean, me personally, I was very excited to get more characters from the Mahabharata with Bhima, but some people were just only interested in getting Durga in the game, or, you know, technically new Sakura face added. And that's perfectly fine, but if you're coming from, especially from what I've seen in certain like Twitter areas as someone that also plays Star Rail, there seems to be like this weird expectation that FGO should also just kind of have the same release schedule as these other games where, yeah, these other games will give you like, here's the next 6 weeks of content, and then here's the next 6 weeks of content after that, right? FGO is really not going to do that, and this is not to throw shade at any other game, but they really are focused on the story. You have the main writers from Fate Stay Night, Fate Zero even coming in as a guest writer, the Fate Extella Extra CCC games, Apocrypha, all coming in to work on this collaborative project, and so sometimes they just need extra time to write the story. Now, is that an excuse for why there can't be content? Absolutely not. They could just run reruns of different events. I mean, when there's slow periods like there are on NA, you could obviously just throw in like a 1 week event, a 2 week event, a 2 week lottery, 1 week lottery. I don't really think people would compare or just complain anyways, depending on what they got during those periods. But it's just one of those games that is unfortunately focused on the story alone, right? They really want to tell a good story. In fact, the servants that we get in the game are dictated by the story. You might have seen that on JP, we recently got Ciel, and she's a big character from Tsukihime that the main author of Tsukihime had to fight for to get in the game by making her quote-unquote space Ciel so she could fit into the story because they didn't want to add non-fake characters into the game. So it's not as though like, oh, it's just as easy as drop a new hype character, drop a new hype story chapter. Sometimes the editors over at Los Angeles and the writer over at, well, the Type Moon portion of the game are kind of going against each other, trying to decide how they can make servants, because half of them want it to make sense, half of them want to make money, right? And we're kind of caught in the middle of that. And unfortunately, I have to tell my new players that this is not anything new. You know, this is something that we have been caught in the middle of since about maybe year 3, year 4-ish. Definitely by year 5, where they tried to cash grab with a Castoria that did not fit in with the Castoria that we got during Lost Belt 6. And if you're curious what I mean by that, check her skills and her descriptions for when she originally released versus the ones that she got when she released with Lost Belt 6, they're clearly not supposed to be the same character. One is this legendary sword wielder. The other is clearly this magical master person, right? This magician. And so even with stuff like that, you can see that the writers are arguing with Los Angeles staff as to what should go into the game and how we can make it work. And then now we have the Star Rail collab going into this. That's going to be at the end of 2025. I don't doubt that there's going to be more stress on the game because half of the team is going to be focused on writing that. God forbid they take Nasu, the main writer, and have him write the Star Rail campaign, because then that pretty much takes our main guy off of FGO to go write something else, which isn't a knock on Star Rail. That's a game that I play as well, but it's just, again, expect more random dead periods because they just really haven't figured out how to run their game yet. As a game from the Paleozoic era of gacha games, right? Back when Dragon Ball had their first game, Bleach had their first game, even when Naruto Blazing was still coming out. That's when FGO was releasing, and yet those games have still kind of made a way to reform with the times, but hey, at the very least, they don't put out a really good story that we're able to read, so maybe they can kind of get away with it, which, I mean, some of you may have experienced firsthand that, you know, you go read a story, summon for a servant because you read their story and it was just that good. So suffice to say, don't panic, don't complain, it's fine, this is how it always is. You can knock it, but I don't think they're really going to change. They've mentioned how they wanted to like make more consistent content, but they need to like double their staff, and that still hasn't happened, so it's just one of those things that you kinda gotta live with if you want to play the game, which is not me simping for them because this is not the only gacha game I play. When FGO is having dead periods, you can find me playing Star Rail, Arc Knights, Dokkan JP. I mean, man, even Genshin just offered a free 5-star unit. I might go try that game out. But it's just to say that maybe this game won't be your main game that you're playing. Maybe you should go explore other options while you're playing FGO. But this is just one of those random spur-of-the-moment things that I kind of just thought of a recording. Sorry if it seems very off the cuff, but it was just one of those things that I hear people talking about like, oh my goodness, FGO is dying, not again. And I'm like, I hear this multiple times a year, like unironically multiple times a year, and it's just phases. So you know what? Next time you hear this, you can reference someone to this little rant over here that I guess that I'm doing and just say, look, it happened in 2024. I'm sure by 2028, it's still going to be fine. They're still going to release hot husbando units, hot waifu units, broken supports, and all other things under the sun. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace, late guys.